Well, the security of our judges at every level has been top of mind for a while as they increasingly face threats and protests outside of their homes. Recently, the state legislature passed a bill to make sure state judges' personal information is kept private. Raya Katene is at the Capitol with how the conversation will likely spread to lawmakers. Raya?
Julie, a lawmaker I spoke to says it's far too easy for anyone to access elected officials' information, including their personal phone numbers and their home addresses. You know, when someone files to run for public office, that filing is considered government data and therefore it is public information. But privatizing those details is something some lawmakers have been advocating for years. Less than 3 months before the attacks on Representative Melissa Hortman and Senator John Hoffman at their homes, a conversation about protecting state legislators and their information was unfolding at the Minnesota State Capitol.
There are bad actors who want us to be harmed. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle we're on.
Well, we're going to do something about this that does provide protections to literally everybody, because you're right, it is a huge problem. It transcends partisan differences. We cannot allow people to not feel safe in their own homes.
That conversation, part of a House committee meeting on March 27th, took place as a provision to Minnesota state law was proposed and eventually passed, expanding protections for judges and making their property records private. An added layer of protection after this law went into effect in August of last year, making the personal information, including phone numbers and home addresses of all judicial officials, private.
These protections are warranted. But I believe that by not extending them to legislators and other high-profile elected officials, we are just leaving a risk that should not be necessary.
The next legislative session won't start until February of next year, but Representative Lee Finke says she and other lawmakers are already having this conversation. It's also top of mind for Senator Ron Latz,
absolutely,
chair of the Judiciary and Public Safety Committee.
So there's a balance we're going to have a conversation about.
That balance, he says, is making sure legislators are still accessible to their constituents, but protected at the same time. A conversation lawmakers will certainly be having as they reconvene next session.
If we want democracy to survive, we've got to be able to go about that business freely and without fear.
And Minnesota law also protects the private information of all judges, family members, as well as all employees in the Minnesota judicial branch. There are some exceptions to the law. For example, if it's deemed necessary that information is released because of a public concern. Julie.
All right, all good things to talk about and debate. Thank you, Raya.